Judge!
Hey guys, welcome to the Cinema Judge. First of all, first things first, to all my regulars out there, you guys are fantastic. Thanks so much for tuning in every week. But now if you're a first-time listener, let me briefly tell you what our show's about here. The studios that give us movie clips, interviews, behind-the-scenes footage. What we do is simple. We put it together and we present you, the jury, the evidence. I don't tell you to see it or not to see it or anything like that. I might say if I like it or not, but I'm not here to yell, scream, or complain about Hollywood. That's not our jam here. Because this is the way I look at it. Any movie is somebody's favorite movie. We all walk different paths. This is the way I look at it. We all want to spend our hard-earned money wisely. Because we all want the same thing. An enjoyable movie experience. It's really quite simple. I'm a tour guide. Pretty much, that's my gig. I like movies and I like to share it with you. There's so much noise out there. This is one place I want you to be able to come to, hear about a movie, and not have somebody crying about it or whatever. Now, approaching the bench today, we have the third installment of the Guardians of the Galaxy, and it's directed by James Gunn, now the runner of DCU. So he probably won't be doing any of these in the future. Anything could happen. He could quit that gig and come back. But for the foreseeable future, he's done with this whole series. But the best part is, though, he had his hands on it the whole way through. He wrote, directed all of them. So you know what you're getting into when you watch Guardians of the Galaxy. And I'm going to do everything I can to keep all spoilers out of this. Because no one likes that. First off, we're going to play the trailer. And immediately after that, we're going to play a couple-minute featurette. And in this featurette, there's a lot of on-set footage, interviews, and there's talking about the whole process of everything involved with Guardians. And at the end of the show, I'll give you a website in case you want to watch the show, because in the show we have interview scenes, all those things. But in that featurette, it's really kind of fun because you see them on the set, joking, laughing, but then they intersplice scenes from the movie and all that kind of stuff. Here's a trailer and then featurette for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3.
I'm gonna tell you something. I'm Star-Lord. I formed the Guardians. Met a girl, fell in love. That girl died, but then she came back. Came back a total dick.
Oh, please.
He left out some important information, but that is the gist of it.
My sacred mission is to create the perfect society.
He didn't want to make things perfect. He just hated things the way they are.
I want you all to know that I'm grateful to fight beside my friends.
Incinerate them.
We were always searching for a family until we found each other.
Are you ready for one last ride?
We'll all fly away together.
Into the forever in a beautiful sky.
Whoever it was that you were in love with, it sounds more like her.
Her? That's ridiculous.
Do not bring me into this.
Knock it off!
What?
Just never noticed how black your eyes were.
They were replaced by my father as a method of torture.
He picked a pretty set.
What's up, everybody? Pratt here.
They've given me a camera and a list of rules, all of which I'm going to ignore. To be reunited with this Guardians family for Volume 3, it's really fantastic.
We're genuine fans, so there's something really sweet about geeking out on set.
You had me at...
The Guardians is about humor, it's about action, it's about cosmic adventures.
Drax, sit up!
That's what it's here for.
Drax, it's called a sofa. It's not a bed.
I find it hard to believe it doesn't have multiple purposes.
But it's really about this found family.
Don't forget where we came from.
This is a Rocket origin story. We are learning more and more about what Rocket has been through.
We were always searching for a family until we found each other.
Let's give the galaxy something to remember us by.
It's so beautiful.
Everything is in the details.
It's imagination, music, beautiful imagery. It's really a fantastic story from the brain of a mad genius, James Gunn.
Everything that drives it is that emotional center of all of these characters who are all outsiders.
We have been running our whole lives.
Pete, I'm done running.
I love everybody, and I'm so proud of what we've accomplished. I want you all to know that I'm grateful to fight beside my friends.
It's another rock opera. It's really fantastic, and it wraps it up in a way that really only James could.
Are you ready for one last ride? We'll all fly away together
Into the forever and beautiful sky.
Thank God I don't operate the camera for this movie, because if I did, it would look terrible.
Now, like I said earlier, if you want to watch this as a TV version, I'm going to give you that website at the end of the show. But coming up next, we're going to hear from James Gunn, the director. And I love this interview because what he talks about is a very genesis of this whole process where even then, he knew it was more than just one movie. And then he also talks about just how much he's grown to love the characters and everybody involved. And then right after that, we're going to hear from Chris Pratt. And he's going to talk about reuniting with everybody after so many years. Because they've been working on this generally for like 10 or 12 years. I mean, all of them together. And this is pretty much the end. At least that's what they're saying. You know how movies are. Anything can change at any time. But in their mind's eye, this is the end. And after Chris Pratt, we're going to hear from Karen Gillan. And she's also going to address the idea of reuniting with everybody again and just how it feels like family.
I think that from the beginning, I don't want to sound too egocentric, but I always had an idea that this could be a trilogy. I always had an idea that this was a bigger story than just one movie. And I always knew that I had a fuller story that I needed to tell from the very beginning about Rocket, about Nebula, about Peter Quill. And that's what I think that we've done. Each character has a beginning and an ending that ends at the end of this movie. So I always felt like this was going to be a bigger story. I think, probably the most surprising thing about my Guardians journey is just how much I've fallen in love with this cast and this crew and how we have become a family. People work on TV shows, they become really close to people, but we've been making these things for almost 12 years. We've been working on Guardians movies and doing press tours like this and everything. And so we've just become so close. That's the hardest thing is not seeing these people every day.
It's to be able to reunite with the Guardians, it feels amazing. This is the third and final installment of a trilogy that's been life-changing to all of us. So we're really just trying to savor it and take it in. It's felt great.
It felt incredible to be back on set with everyone. It truly coming together feels like a family being reunited. It's been almost 10 years now that we've been working together, and we've been coming together sporadically over a decade. And those were quite formative years of our lives. And we get to run around as superheroes every so often. It's actually the best gig ever.
Now, for me, when I sit down and think about this sometimes, actors, they're on a job for a few months out of the year. Maybe some productions take longer than that. But people like you and me, we go to the same old job, sometimes for years upon years, and we don't need to worry about reuniting with our people because sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. We're stuck with people far longer than we ever want to be. But for these guys, They go on a gig, and then boom, next gig, next gig, next gig. But when you have a franchise like this, you get that opportunity to keep reconnecting. And as they all grow, it must be really fun to just step back into those shoes of those characters, especially with people that you've grown such a great connection with. And sometimes when you hear about them talking, they might not ever see each other again. Or like, oh yeah, I worked with this person 10 years ago, or whatever it may be. But on this next interview, James Gunn is talking, and this, for whatever reason, this just made me feel really good. When he talks here, he talks about, for him, it's not really like reuniting with people, because so many of the cast members he in real life is friends with. And that's just, I don't know why that makes me feel happy, or just cool that maybe they call each other up, say, hey man, it's me, what's going on? Or they hang out, do dinner. Not that it matters if they do or don't, but I think sometimes that really helps the chemistry on a film. Because if you get along on the outside, your communication is better when you're working. So when you're working, it's going to be this fluid, and you go, hey, how about this, how about that? You can bounce ideas off each other. So at this next interview, I just love hearing the director talk about, in real life, they're friends.
Well, the truth is I see Chris Pratt all the time, so I'm not really reuniting when we go back on set. I see Pom all the time. I talk to Karen a lot. So obviously my brother Sean, we're buddies. So it really isn't reuniting. It's just kind of getting us all back together again. And so that's more of what the vibe is. I think the surprising thing on set is everybody being together, and everybody has their own important piece of the puzzle on screen, but also off screen in terms of us as a group. Each person has their own specific piece of this family.
And like I said, I think that's just a really great interview. That maybe, like even in my mind's eye, they're all buddies. It could be. Now up next is another really great interview with James Gunn. And I love these kind of interviews. He talks about when he was first approached about this movie. And he's like, I don't want to screw this up. I don't want it to be cartoony. I'll let him talk about it. But I just love this part of interviews when a director can and is willing to talk about the process of, where do I go with this kind of movie? How can I do it? And then during that interview also, he talks about the arc of all the characters involved. Everyone has beginning, middle, and end. And then he also talks about the main focus of this movie in this interview. It's pretty much about Rocket. It's a giant mission to do stuff for him, if you will. I don't want to spoil anything. But he talks about that. What happened to Rocket? Because none of us really know. We only had little glimpses or brief hints of maybe how he got to where he is. This movie addresses all of that. But he also then talks about the character arcs. But then after that, we're going to talk to Chris Pratt, and he's going to also talk about his character. That from day one, from film one and on, he keeps losing people. And it's hard for that character. It's like, man, everybody I get close to dies. And he's just exploring that character.
From the very beginning, when Marvel first came to me and said, hey, would you be interested in doing this Guardians of the Galaxy movie? We're taking pitches on it. What do you think? I was a little afraid. I'm like, this could be stupid. This could be like Bugs Bunny in the middle of the Avengers. I didn't want to create a cartoony character to, ruin the MCU. And so I was driving home from that meeting. I was thinking about it. I'm like, okay, let's say that there is a talking space raccoon. Where did he come from? How could he be grounded? How could I feel real about this character? And I realized that this was the saddest creature in the world. This was a little guy who was taken, a little innocent animal and turned into something he didn't ask to be, and was like nothing else in the universe. So he was completely alone. To me, that's the seeds of the entire Guardians franchise. That was always the story I was telling, and it leads to this. So I'm excited for people to see that, because I think it's always been going that way. But not to mention the arcs for Nebula, for Peter Quill, for Kraglin. They all have their own story that we're telling that ends with Volume 3.
Yeah, Quill's a person who's always defined himself by, well, ever since Guardians 1, has defined himself by being the leader of this band of misfits, and Guardians 2 defines himself again by having been raised by Yondu, he has a deeper understanding of who he is. But everyone keeps losing. Everyone keeps dying on him. So his identity is a guy who keeps losing everyone who's close to him. And now Gamora is essentially dead. The version of her that's back is not the same version as the one that he fell in love with. They don't have the same shared communal experiences. So it's emotional. It's painful, and he's struggling.
And like you said, Peter is really struggling because every time he sees Gamora, his heart just breaks because, as we all know, they had a great love situation going on. And just imagine that for anybody and picture yourself, somebody that you care deeply about. And then next thing you know, they're looking at you like you were a stranger. You have all these memories that you have together, and they don't share one of them. They are completely a blank slate. So, the poor guy, it must be just terrible dealing with that. Every time you look at this person, dead in the eyes, just nothing. You're like, oh man, here, just pull it out of my back. Thank you. We have a scene that kind of addresses that coming up next. In this scene, they're all in this little, how would I say it? They're all on this, I won't say planet, but whatever it is. I don't want, like I said, I don't want to spoil nothing. But here Peter has this chance to have a heart-to-heart with her. And she's not going for it. But here's also the really cool part about Guardians of the Galaxy, the writing. Within this scene, it's really heartfelt. You hear the music, and then the humor. It's just so awesome. James Gunn is a master at constructing dialogue, scenes that can have action, drama, comedy, all in a scene, and heartbreaking at the same time. The guy is so talented. I can't wait to see what he brings to the DCU. Because, man, the guy has it all. But listen to the scene and just listen to those little beats of, here's a powerful scene, and then, bam, right there, comedy, and then back. So well done. Here it is.
And I miss you so much. And maybe if you open yourself up to it, there's a possibility.
I don't think so, Quinn.
Quill.
I don't think so.
Well, what I'm trying to say...
Peter, you know this is an open line, right?
What?
We're listening to everything you're saying.
And it is painful.
And you're just telling me now?
We were hoping it would stop on its own.
But I switched it over to private.
What color button did you push?
Blue! For the blue suit!
Oh, no.
Blue is the open line for everyone.
Orange is for blue.
What?
Black is for orange. Yellow is for green. Green is for red. And red is for yellow.
No, yellow is for yellow. Green is for red, red is for green.
I don't think so.
Try it then.
You were right.
The man's brilliant. He can write a scene to perfection. I'm bowing. You can't see it, obviously, but I'm bowing just to do it because he's the man. Now, coming up next, we're going to hear from Chris Pratt again. And he's going to go a little bit further into being able to address a character and go deeper into it and have these emotional moments and not just be one-dimensional.
Well, I think as a person who's in the business of creating a performance or art, you're always desperate to test yourself and to expand your abilities. And I had the opportunity to do that on this in regards to the emotions surrounding Gamora and Rocket.
And he's right. In this movie, he does go different places. It's really kind of fun to see. Now, up next, like he was talking about, Gamora, who's played by Zoe Saldana, she talks about her character a little bit. But just so you know, the interview that we have with her, she's at the world premiere. So you can hear a lot of stuff in the background. So that's what that's all about. So after we hear her, we're going to hear from Karen Gillan. And she also talks about her character and how she's grown. She's a little bit more laid back, a little bit more loose. Because in other movies, she's a little bit more strict. But in this one, she's finding her way more, and she talks about that.
She's great if you ask her. Gamora feels good. She's a bit confused as to why these these misfits keep looking at her as if they know her, and even though she has no experience to base, how familiar they feel so familiar to her, and that is a very complex state to be in. And it was quite interesting to get into this new Gamora. It was fresh.
Nebula definitely has loosened up and lightened up a little bit in this film. She's been on this sort of journey of healing throughout all of the movies, and now she's at a place where Thanos has been eliminated from her life. She can start to develop a little bit more of that lighter personality. She's got a little bit more of a sense of humor this time. She has a fun rapport with Star-Lord. They're very quippy and back and forth with each other. And it's been really nice to explore this new version of her, this more evolved version of her, and one that has more compassion and more vulnerability.
Without question, both of those actors are just top of their game, phenomenal, incredible people. Man, to be able to talk to them, the stories that they must be able to tell, all the projects they're involved in, I just tell you what, those two are just spectacular in this movie and everything they do. Now, speaking of their greatness, we have a scene with them. They're in an elevator type deal, and they're holding this one lady hostage because they want to get this information and help their person out. So we have Quill, Gamora, and Nebula. And Quill is having this kind of discussion with their hostage, explaining the situation of, hey, I just want to get the information, I want to get the help that we need, but she over here, she just wants to be taking people out. And then he gives her a brief synopsis of their relationship.
I'm so sorry about this, Yura.
Oh, please.
We're here to save the life of our friend. That is all. We paid her to help us get in and get out. You'd think that'd mean, I'm gonna help you do it in a way that no one knows it's happening. But no, what she means is I'm gonna shoot people, threaten people's lives. And I know you're probably asking, why would I trust her? Well, that's a good question. The answer is, we used to be in love. Yeah, she was my girlfriend, only she doesn't remember it because it wasn't her. Because her dad threw her off a magic cliff and she died, and then I lost my temper and nearly destroyed half the universe. And she came back out of the past. There she is. Everyone else who died in the past stayed dead, not her. Why? Was it the magic cliff? I don't know. That's some freaking Infinity Stone scientist. And some dumbass Earth dude who met a girl, fell in love. That girl died, and then came back a total dick.
You left out some important information, but that is the gist of it.
Now, the last line was spoken by Nebula, played by Gillan. And I want to go officially on the record. She is just an amazing actress. Everything she's in, I'll watch whatever she's in. And she has this killer sense of humor. I watch her on TikTok, her videos, top shelf. I just totally dig everything she does. And up next, we're going to have an interview with her. She first is going to talk a little bit more about her character and how glad she is that she's had this amazing arc. And then she goes into a little bit about putting on the makeup because her character is bald and colored blue. And in the first movie, she actually shaved her head. But in this one, she doesn't have to.
I just feel so lucky that Nebula has been given the most incredible emotional arc over the course of all these films. She started off when we met her as a bitter, tormented, twisted character on the periphery. And then actually, as we sort of gradually got to know her throughout the movies, we started to empathize with her and understand her point of view, and she didn't seem so villainous anymore. And then we watched her relationship with Gamora kind of develop, and they started to understand each other and gain empathy towards each other. And then she started to feel like for the first time in her life, she had a family around her and people who actually felt love towards her. And I think she probably has never experienced that in her entire life and never felt that. And so for her, it's been a journey of learning how to accept that, how to feel worthy of that love. And I think she's finally in a place where she feels that way now. It does take a lot of work to get into the whole Nebula getup. The makeup process has definitely evolved over the years. On the first film, it took 5 hours and I had shaved my head. So it was like they would get all the stubble off of my head first thing and then glue everything to my face and neck. And then we sort of streamlined that over the years. And actually, I was able to keep my hair for this last movie. And so that actually added an hour onto the makeup because we had to wrap the hair. But I was willing to do it because I'm like, I get to have hair. Woohoo! So it's definitely been streamlined, but it's a challenging process, but it's one that I wouldn't trade because I get to play this amazing character with such a cool look, and it really helps me feel like her.
Now you might be asking yourself, what have I seen her in? Well, if you look at her filmography, it's massive. But just to name a couple, she starred in a couple seasons of Doctor Who as Amy Pond, and also another TV show, Selfie. But another massive movie she was in, or massive movie series, is Jumanji. She knocks it out of the park on that bad boy. What a great job. In another movie that doesn't get as much love as I think it should, Gunpowder Milkshake from 2021. If you haven't seen that one, it is an action-packed movie. It's well worth your time. I mean, everything she does is great, but check out that, Gunpowder Milkshake. But coming up next, we have a new member to this franchise, Will Poulter. He plays Adam Warlock. And we have some really good interviews, so I'm just going to let those roll, because he covers a lot of ground, from working with the cast members, joining an already pre-established group, and all kinds of stuff. Here he is.
Being part of the MCU, honestly, is still kind of a bit surreal. I think just because I was a fan of the Guardians films specifically, first and foremost, and from the outside looking in, it was this kind of big, scary spectacle. And then it was a really lovely surprise to come in and be welcomed with such open arms, and then discover that, the big, scary spectacle, and then to discover that kind of, big, scary spectacle is actually, a set full of lovely people who have so much fun, while they're working, was a really, really lovely surprise. And putting on the costume for the first time really did kind of bring, the feeling that I was part of the MCU home. While it's still seeping in right now, I guess that was the real start of the journey, and certainly a massive part of, feeling like the character. And I mean, our costume team are so insanely talented, and there are so many people that make up the costume department, and they did such a incredible job. So I'm really grateful to have collaborated with them. I was really fortunate when it came to playing Adam Warlock that obviously the character is sort of pre-established, and given that he appears in the comics, there is kind of immediate sort of research material available to you. Of course, he's teased in the second movie, but the fact that he first appears, I think, in I don't know what edition it is, but my agent was kind enough to get me a first edition of an Adam Warlock comic, so I have that in my house somewhere. But being able to read that among other comics that he appears in, and reading about also some of the kind of fan fiction around Adam Warlock was really, really helpful. The internet was a really great provider in that sense as well. So between the comic and what the fans had produced online, a lot of my research was done for me, and then it became about kind of collaborating with James and having our two visions align over who Adam would be. And we settled on this idea of this being his kind of introduction, obviously, and the portrayal of the character in his infancy, as a kind of young person entering the world, trying to sort of carve out, the sort of person that he wanted to be, and what side of the line he wanted to stand on as far as good and evil is concerned. Yeah, I think playing the kind of childlike aspects of Adam's characteristics, just allows you to kind of return to that kind of imagination-led sort of childlike fun that I think, is how I kind of got into acting, and to a degree how we all kind of engage with acting. I think, in some ways it's a psychological process, so you have to sort of think about, the formation of your characters, I think, from a kind of childlike starting point. So it was not a foreign concept to me preparing for the role. I think it's something I think about with all my roles. But playing the childlike qualities of Adam was fun. I think that's where a lot of the humor lied. And then I think it was about trying to manage, in a relatively short period of time, a kind of maturity arc, even in the context of this first movie, where, through his contact with various people and through various experiences in the film, he matures over time. Massive I mean, invaluable, honestly, to have people as experienced as the, Guardians Legacy cast are offering you advice and, helping you out and being able to speak to, really particular things about what it's like to shoot movies of this nature was huge for me as a young actor coming in and being the new guy. I really, really lent on them. Chris, especially from day one, was so supportive and was in every sense a leader and a role model on set. So I was really grateful for him in particular, but everyone was fantastic to me, honestly, and they really kind of made me feel part of the group while we were shooting.
Well, you just heard from Will Poulter. Up next, we have a scene with him, his character, Adam Warlock. Now, this scene takes place early on in the movie. In a nutshell, this is what it is. His character has been tasked with the responsibility of trying to retrieve some information from one of the Guardians. So there's not a lot of dialogue going on here, but he crashes into their place of living, basically, their little city, and he starts causing mayhem. But that's when Nebula steps up and tries to stop him. But once we soon find out, this guy's pretty tough, and he kicks the tar out of her. And at the end of the scene, just grabs her by the belt and just whips her across the street and through a bunch of buildings.
Hey! Where did you go, Squirrel?
On the ground!
Now, another new cast member in this movie is Chukwudi Iwuji. He plays the High Evolutionary. With this guy, there's a lot going on. And here he is talking about all that stuff.
What drew me to the part of High Evolutionary was James Gunn surprising me by offering me the role while we were filming the opening dance sequence of Peacemaker. And so as soon as he did that, I was always going to say yes, because I love him as an artist and a collaborator, and it seemed like a great challenge. What makes the High Evolutionary an effective villain is, I think, the fact that we don't shy away from the fact that he actually is a villain. The clue's in the title. Sometimes we're so eager in movies to kind of find the villain sympathetic that we veer away from the fact that these are bad people. These are people doing some pretty horrendous stuff, and this guy does some seriously horrendous stuff. So I think he's very effective because it reminds people about the cruelty that we're capable of, the cruelty towards those that are more defenseless than we are, reminding us of that, reminding us of the necessity to keep a watch out for these sort of people. And I embrace that fully. It's fun to play as a villain. And so I think he's effective because we're actually seeing someone in this movie who is not likable. And I loved it as a challenge because I was like, can I still play that truthfully? Can I truly be unlikable, embrace that, and still have some level of maybe comprehension as to why I'm doing what I'm doing? And that's the real challenge. You don't have to like me, but do you understand why I'm doing it? And that's very fun to play. Working with the Guardians cast, it was quite extraordinary because they were all such warm people. These are superstars that I was watching on my IMAX, giant, personalities and talents. And it's very unique to work with a group of people who are so well known, so successful, but also so down to earth. And I think James really surrounds himself with people that are very much down to earth. So coming into such a big job, it didn't feel like such a big job because they were so welcoming. I didn't feel any pressure. The only pressure I felt was the pressure I gave myself to justify James's choice in me, My costume describing it is that it's so regal. It's a regal purple. It really evokes the nature of the character and the sort of essence of the character as someone who glides through a space and is noticed and sort of is above it all. And the work that Judiana Makovsky and Legacy and everyone that put, work into making the costume work for me also. Like, they were like, are you comfortable with this? Is it too heavy? How do we make it look good? Does it look slick enough? Right down to the elegance of it. And I think they sort of really molded it around what I was doing, and it really helped. But I came into it, and the first day I was there and they put that costume on me, I was like, oh, okay. Now I really get this guy. It was really the final piece in how at least I was going to approach the character. And that came through such detailed and a lot of work. I mean, they sent it back and forth. They kept tweaking it right to the end of the shoot to get it perfect. So when you have that sort of dedication, you also you sort of repay that dedication as an artist too.
And he was awesome. He nails this role. He owns it. The guy just embodies this character, because it'd be very easy to take this character to the extreme or overdo it, overplay it. He doesn't. He walks that perfect razor line, and he just walks that intelligence, grace. There's so many words you could use to describe him in this role, but he nailed it. Really, really great job. We have a clip for you. And in this scene, he's talking to Peter, played by Chris Pratt, and he's talking about his whole mad plan, basically.
Your friend once took advantage. I learned my lessons. I aimed some small part of my mental capacity back in my own direction, and now gravity itself serves my whims. You must find Counter-Earth familiar.
Counter-Earth?
I visited your planet many years ago.
Earth hasn't been my planet in a long time.
Your people had wonderful spirit. The art and music and literature were some of the finest in the universe. Earth would be a fabulous place were it not for the ignorance and bigotry.
Okay.
It inspired me to create Counter-Earth.
I don't care.
All of the good and none of the bad.
I don't need another speech by some impotent whack job whose mother didn't love him, rationalizing why he needs to conquer the universe.
I'm not trying to conquer the universe. I'm perfecting it.
Spoken like a true psychopath. I mean, what could possibly go wrong? Gee, let's check history. So many, maybe one or two people who've wanted to make the perfect society. Yeah, well, let's see how that plays out there, buddy. But coming up next, we're going to talk about the practical sets, CGI, reality. And I love this kind of discussion because we know these kind of movies, a lot of filmmakers lean heavily on the CGI part, and there's nothing wrong with that. You do what you have to do, budgetary, what have you. But with James Gunn, I really like how he used practical stunts or practical sets. Practical as much as he can. He uses, whether it be puppets, mannequins, real sets, what have you. And I love that. And I've seen so much stuff online. I'm not going to give any scenes away, but I'm like, oh my goodness, that wasn't a person. That's a mannequin or a puppet or a breathing mannequin, whatever it is. That's what I like about these kind of movies with James Gunn. Whenever he can, he tries to use stuff that's real. So first, we're going to hear from Chukwudi Iwuji, and he discusses that about being able to act with something in front of him, not just a screen or a tennis ball. And then after he talks about that, you're going to hear a really good interview with James Gunn talking about all of that. I'll just let him roll. Here it goes.
The practicality of the sets, the fact that I was seeing in front of me what my character was supposed to be seeing, really helped my performance because I didn't have to do as much imagination with CGI or looking at a green screen. It was very tactile. And actually there, Beth Mickle, who designed the set, did such a great job with that. So I was able to get a sense of the grandeur of this guy's world, especially his lair, as it were, this raised desk and everything, and to look down on everyone. And for an actor, that's very helpful, because one of the things we forget to do is actually see. You know, we're so stressed about the performance, we don't actually look around our surroundings sometimes on stage. So it's wonderful to come and actually see everything I'm going to be using and my domain. It added to the psychology of the character.
Well, I don't really have some obsession with doing things practically in camera with effects. What I look for is what is the best way to tell the story. So if an effect can be done the best with prosthetic effects, and we have more prosthetic effects in this than any movie ever made in the history of film, for real, then I'm going to do that. And if it's best served by doing computer, graphics, then I'm going to do that. So it's really what looks the best, what serves the story. If you have a raccoon running around who's talking and doing action scenes, you need to CGI that. We can't do that with puppeteering. It's just not possible. But if you're going to have a, vampire Batwoman who's going to have big emotional scenes with the rest of the cast, well, that is probably going to be, a prosthetic effect. And I find that something in a lot of movies they do is they just don't prepare enough. So they just do everything CGI because they're being lazy and they're not getting it done beforehand. And we just make sure to take as much time as we need to get things right so we can do it on screen when that's the best way to do it.
And that what separates him from just some normal director. The guy invests, takes time. What's the best thing for the shot? Best thing for the movie. That's what it's all about. The man cares about the product. He wants us to enjoy it. Because sometimes when you watch a movie and they just cheap out and they just go, here's CGI, it's like watching a video game. If you watch a whole movie that's like a video game, just buy the darn video game. But not with somebody like him. He invests in the shot. What's best for that scene, and I salute him. Now, speaking of sets, we're going to hear from Karen Gillan talking about one of her favorite sets that she's shot on.
There's so many amazing sets on this movie. I think one of my favorites would have to be the sort of like the skin belly substance. It was all squidgy, and we got to wear fun space suits, and it was just one of the more unique sets I think I've ever seen.
All right, they just talked about the sets, but the big part of Guardians of the Galaxy is the music. And I don't know about any of you guys, I hope you found joy in the music from 1 and then what you'll hear in 3. Every movie has that wonderful selection, and you just look forward to it. You wait for it, but it doesn't distract you. Some movies, when they put in a song, whatever, it just totally takes you out of the movie. Not with James Gunn. He takes so much time selecting the song that's going to make the right impact. Not necessarily the most popular song, but the one that's meant for that scene. And up next, we're going to hear from both Chris Pratt and really, most importantly, from James Gunn. And when he talks about how he goes about making those decisions. And for him, it's the hardest part of making the movie. Music is so important to me. And when I hear great music, it just blows my mind. And so speaking just for my own personal experience, and the songs that he chose were just spot on. Here's Chris, and then Gunn.
Yeah, we have a lot of really great Guardians of the Galaxy have been now. People come to know the Guardians of the Galaxy by the music, and in this, it's no different. The only difference is that we expand various other decades, 80s, 90s, and the year 2000s as well. In the music. So yeah, we've got really extraordinary needle drop moments. Creep at the opening is really sets the tone for what this installment is, and is stripped down version of the Radiohead song that a lot of people haven't heard, which is pretty cool. It's a limited release, and so people will be hearing this version, which is really just Tom York and a guitar, I think, and it's beautiful.
I think the hardest thing about making this movie was putting together this soundtrack. I think on the first 2 movies, they were all, 70s AM pop hits. There was a limited supply, a limited amount of top 40, 70s songs that I could use. On this movie, it's songs from the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s. So I kind of had all pop music to choose from. And figuring that out was daunting. And I didn't want to let people down. I knew that the first two soundtracks were iconic in their own ways. And so I wanted to do something that was as good as those two things. And I worked really, really hard and switched out songs constantly, trying to figure it out, and eventually came with the mix we have, and I'm really happy with it.
And I'm not going to lie to you, I found what he chose spot on. I know I said that before, but man, music has such a huge influence on a movie. It can move you, it can distract you, it can manipulate you. But whatever he does, it is just perfect. But coming up next, we're going to hear from Pratt and Gunn. They're both going to talk about what they hope we get out of this film.
I hope that the audience's experience was the same to mine in watching the film, because I am in the film, but I also am a fan of these films. And that is to feel as though they've been taken on a complete journey, that we never cheapened the original titles, that we honor the first two volumes, that we naturally allow it to grow, that we weren't cynically making decisions based on the longevity of the franchise with an eye on the business of like, oh, we better keep these around so we can do a bunch more episodes. This feels final, and I think that is less and less. That happens less and less when industry and art merge, like it does in big business Hollywood with these multi-million-dollar movies, billion-dollar franchises. It's pretty rare that people are willing to let them end in the way that best suits the story, not the way that best suits the business model. And because of that, you get to see really fresh, compelling, inventive storytelling. And I hope audiences appreciate that.
I always hope for one thing when people go to see a movie. I hope that when they go to see a movie, they walk in, they enjoy it, of course. And then when they walk out of the theater, they love the person next to them a little more than what they felt about them when they walked in. That when they walk out of the theater, maybe they feel a little bit more hopeful about what this world can be than when they walked in. This is a story about compassion. It's about the power of compassion, the power of empathy, and hopefully a little bit of that will soak up, just a little bit in people, and then we'll have been, done what we needed to do.
Now, just speaking just strictly for myself, I love this movie. I love this franchise. A bunch of losers, misfits, people that were just tossed away. They come together and they create their own little family, friendship. They argue, they succeed, they fail. This is the kind of movie franchise I love. It's not a bunch of hoity-toity people and all these kind of things. I can relate to it because every one of us, sometime during our life, we've had that feeling of not fitting in, not belonging. But then sometimes you find that core group of people that you could call your people. And no matter what happens at the end of the day, they're still going to be with you. And that's a rarity. So that's, for me, this movie really symbolizes friendship, loyalty, everything like that. Because that's what sells this movie. They're not over-the-top superheroes per se. I mean, yes, they have great abilities, but it's done in a way that it's so relatable. And that, plus the music, everything else, I just embrace these movies. And if this is the end, it's the end. If there's more after, so be it. But, as you all know, when it comes to Marvel or almost any movie these days, make sure you stay to the very, very, very end, last credit when the lights come on. Because they have a couple scenes. I don't know if there's 2 or 3. Off the top of my head, I forget. I just saw it today. But that being said, don't leave early. Watch everything because it's a good time. But I hope you enjoyed our in-depth look at Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Now, if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, any way to improve the show, please let me know. cinemajudge@hotmail.com or go to Instagram, The Cinema Judge, or go to YouTube, Cinema Judge. I have almost any other platform. Feel free, because I can't grow if I don't know. Also, if you also want to have a little bit more fun, if you ever go to the Oculus, the Meta World, if you go to the Horizon Worlds, I'm often there later at night. If you go to a rooftop after party or laser tag, and it's a place created by Mikey Ace. So if you don't really know what I'm talking about, go to Horizon Worlds, look up Mikey Ace, and look at his world. But rooftop after party and also laser tag. Now, I didn't forget. Now, if you want to watch the TV version of this, go to bit.ly/Cinema Judge. Or if you go to Cinema Judge at Bloomington Public Television in Minnesota, you might try to find it that way too and just type in Cinema Judge. Either way, go there. A lot of these shows are there. This one's there too. But several others are there on demand to watch whenever you want. And every one of them also has interviews and all that kind of jazz, if you're into that kind of stuff. But now, it's, for me, the most important part of the show for me. It's when I thank you, every one of you, or not every one of you, but as many as I could possibly say, who listened to the last episode. But also, I know a lot of you listen to the back catalog, and don't think for 1 second I don't appreciate that. That's just a lot harder to see where, when, and how, and all that jazz. So in this little part, I thank everybody who listened to the last episode. And I love hearing how you listen to the show. When you guys talk to me, email me, tell me you listen to it when you're at work, driving in the car, or just relaxing at home, doing the dishes, laundry, whatever it is. I really appreciate that. And some of you who even use me as I'm doing air quotes here, as a night light, where you just plug it in at night and let it play, and voila. I really appreciate it. I don't care how you listen to the show or when you listen to the show. I really appreciate that. So, wherever, whenever, or whatever you're doing, this is for you. To all my listeners around the United States, Mexico, Germany, Minneapolis, Minnesota, St. Paul, Minnesota, Brooklyn, New York, San Francisco, California, Monterey, Leon, Maple Grove, Minnesota, Duluth, Minnesota, Morrisville, Pennsylvania, Granada Hills, California, Valencia, California, South Hadley, Mass, Circle Pines, Minnesota, and boy, what is this one? HermosIllosonora. And then, of course, Frankfurt AM, Maine, Hesse, just to name a few. But so many of you listen to every episode, whether it's a tentpole like this or an independent film. To every one of you who shows up and listens to this show, I am indebted to you, and don't think for a second I don't appreciate it, because I do. But now it's time for the bourbon shoutout. This week it goes out to, first, Lawrence. You, sir, are the man, you dirty dog. I haven't seen you in forever. So now that you traded and went to compliance, it's still great to see you, brother. So anytime you want, stop in, say hello. It was so great to see you. And I hope you pick up that camera and start shooting. You got an eye. You got to step up, Lawrence. But it's great seeing you. And also, Merwin Liquors in Bloomington. I couldn't go to my normal place this week, so I blew into there. And let me tell you, these guys, they're off of Lindale, right across the street from Cub. They are so fun. We talk movies and just have a blast. So to you guys at Merwin Liquors in Bloomington, I truly appreciate your time. You guys were awesome. To you and Lawrence, cheers. But now, if you're a regular listener, you know what I do next. This is the music section. In here, I tell you when I was making the TV version, what I was listening to. Because when I'm doing that, I'm cranking tunes. Because I don't have to worry about talking, sound, or anything. It's just me, the computer, the clips, and music. It's my happy place. Of course, what could I possibly listen to when editing this show? Of course it was volumes 1 and 2. Come on! Those songs are so diverse and fun. If you've never listened to the soundtrack to either 1, 2, and what will be eventually 3, do it. James Gunn knows what he's doing. Great songs. And it was perfect. I couldn't not do it. Come on. Well, that is it. My glass awaits. I'm very, very thirsty. So cheers to you and to the movies. So until next time, be well, be good, and I'm gone. I'm Jeff. Thanks for listening to The Cinema Judge.